David Wow with the Transparency Policy Project, and I'm here today with Mike Luca from the Harvard Business School, who has done really interesting research on the impact of Yelp on business behavior. So can you talk about how you came to this topic and what you found?
So I've always actually been interested in different disclosure policies. Prior to doing this as a graduate student, I had thought about rankings and some traditional ways that people would learn about a product quality. And I started thinking about the digital age and how the internet is changing the way that we make decisions. So I stumbled upon Yelp as a very prominent consumer review website, and started looking and seeing that over the past half decade or so there's been the proliferation not just of Yelp but other sites like TripAdvisor and Angie's List, where people could go online and get all this crowdsourced opinion about products. It was unclear whether or not this is something that consumers are using, or if this is something that has a small niche group of people who are leaving the reviews and reading. So the question that I wanted to set out to answer in this paper was very simple, was how does Yelp affect demand? So I worked with the Washington State Department of Revenue and constructed a database of all of the revenue for restaurants over a 6-year span and matched it up with Yelp data to isolate this effect and show that Yelp is becoming an increasingly important part of how people learn about products.
So how big of an impact does Yelp actually have on how a restaurant does?
The main thing that I look at in the paper is actually stars. So what I could show is that when you get a 1-star increase, and now ratings are done on a 1 to 5 scale, one star increase leads to a 5 to 10% increase on revenue depending on different conditions. So the effect is quite substantial, but it comes with an important caveat, which is that Yelp doesn't affect all restaurants. Yelp, in a very important way, interacts with more traditional forms of reputation. So what I see is that the effect is there for independent restaurants, but chain restaurants who already have a lot of marketing and branding and for whom product quality is already known are not affected by changes in their rating.
So talk a little more about that. So why especially is it such a big impact for independent restaurants?
So quality disclosure is really most important in markets where there historically has been little information. And you could expand that thought to think about what types of restaurants do we have information about. In Seattle, at any given time, there are 1,500 restaurants. Seattle's a market where I was looking. That's more restaurants than anyone could possibly sample. But you should expect to see consumer reviews to have the largest impact where people have the least information. Mm-hmm. So there really is nothing new that you could learn, or a little new that you could learn about a chain restaurant on Yelp.
I see. So should we be confident in the opinions people have as a guide to their behavior? I mean, your results say they do have an impact. Is that a good thing socially?
So I think in some ways this research has opened up more questions than it's answered. So I wouldn't confidently say that for sure in every situation reviews are a good thing. I've started to look a little bit at this issue, and there are dimensions of quality that you might think are interesting and useful for regulators to think about. One thing that I've thought about is hygiene grades and hygiene violations. I worked with the Department of Public Health to get hygiene violations in Seattle for the same period, and you can see that there's a correlation between Yelp ratings and the hygiene violations that restaurants have had. So restaurants that had a lot of violations tended to do worse on Yelp. So to some extent this is promising that at a very high level there is some type of information, good information, that's making its way into these reviews.
So at the Transparency Policy Project, we're very interested in the application of other areas where giving people information can help public purposes. What do you see as some of the applications or implications of what you've found in the domain of information about restaurant quality to other areas, healthcare or other kinds of things that consumers buy and we worry about in public policy?
So maybe I could just take a quick step back and say that reviews are one piece of the puzzle in any industry, I think. So I think that it's helpful to think about a broader framework where you say in any given industry with any given set of products, you could think about consumer reviews as one way to learn about product quality. You could also think about disclosure laws. Mm-hmm. You could also think about more traditional learning such as experts. So I think industry to industry, and this is something we're still trying to get a better feel for, the importance of each of these is going to change. Some of the rules of thumb, I think, are industries where there are a lot of products and not much information, there's a larger scope for reviews to have an impact. Industries where a purchase is very big and one time. I think that this is something where getting the history of other people's purchases is important. Industries where there's a small number of products, I think experts do a much better job.
And so in your future work, you're going to be looking more at this question about sort of thinking about where this kind of information can be more or less useful combined with other sources.
Exactly. So I think that where the industry needs to go is to try to say, what does an overall reputation website look like? Or what would a reputation system look like that's broader than just reviews? So the questions that I think are promising for future research are, what's the relationship between expert reviews and consumer reviews? Are they complements or substitutes? What's the relationship between disclosure laws and consumer reviews? Are they complements or substitutes? I think the answer is going to be that there are conditions under which there are complements and conditions under which there are substitutes. So this is something that I've been thinking about in ongoing research.
Interesting. Thank you very much for talking with us, Mike Luca.
All right, thanks for
Harvard
having
Business
me.
School. For the Transparency Policy Project, I'm David Weil.